Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in white, and we are learning to multiply fractions. Before we get into heaps of questions and a formula that's going to be really useful, let's explain or try to develop that formula as a group. So, I'm going to draw three shapes on the board or on our screen, and we've got two squares and one circle. And what I want us to do is I wanted to come up with a fraction that represents the number of squares in our shapes. So we've got two squares out of a possible three shapes. Okay, what I now want you to do is in your head, I want you to think, well, what is half of the squares? So you probably got, well, that will be one out of three, right? So we'll be circling that. So that's one out of the other three. So that will be half of the squares. So, so another way of thinking it is that we did one half of the 2/3 that we outlined before. And we said, well, that's going to come to 1/3. So we had two squares, which are the 2/3. We halved that, leaving us with one square out of the three shapes. And that's where we got that fraction from there. But what we actually did there, without not really knowing it, is we kind of applied this multiplying rule that I want us to work on. So this of, that is actually maths language for times. So we're going to go 1/2 times 2/3. And I'm going to show us a little formula because our answer is 1/3. We're going to go top times top. So that's 2 times 1. So 2 times 1. That's those two multiplied together. And we're going to do the bottom times the bottom. That's 2 times 3. And we're going to simplify that maths. That's going to become 2/6. Perfect. And then from there, we can actually simplify that fraction. Well, if we divide the top and the bottom by 2, so we think they've got a common factor of 2, we're going to get 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And that there is the original answer that we did just by looking at the shapes and using our heads. And that there was based on a little trick or a little rule that we can now use and memorize to help us. We started off by doing the top number times the other top number, and that's the 2 times 1 over there. So top times top. We then moved on to the next part. We did the bottom number, so bottom times bottom. And that was the 2 times 3 over there. And what we've actually done is we've developed a rule or a formula that will help us with our multiplying of fractions. So if we remember top times top divided by bottom times bottom, we'll be able to multiply any fractions that we have. You can even use your calculator to help you assist with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change pen color, and we're going to get into some questions where we can start applying this new rule that we found out about. So let's start off with question number 1. So let's say we've got 1/4, and I want to times that by 1/2. So do you want to remember that rule that we just looked at down the bottom? Top times top. Well, that's going to be 1 times 1. And then we got bottom times bottom. Well, that's going to become 4 times 2. And then if we do that maths in our heads, 1 times 1, well, that's 1. Perfect. And down the bottom, 4 times 2, well, that's going to become 8. So nice, really good, really, really good. Let's have a look at another question. We're going to do about 4 or 5 of these just to get into the habit of this top times top, bottom times bottom approach. Let's try different fractions. Maybe we got 1/5 of something. And I'm going to multiply that by, let's say, 2/3. So I'm being a bit trickier with my numbers this time. Let's start thinking about our formula. Top times top, bottom times bottom. So 1 times 2, well, that's going to be 2. And 5 times 3, that's going to be 15. So if you notice, I actually skipped the step here because I'm confident enough to do them on my head. And feel free to do that as well, because that's really important, that confidence. Question number 3, let's try another one. Let's do 1/6 times 1/3, okay? Top times top, that's 1 times 1, which is 1, okay? Bottom times bottom, 3 times 6, well, that's 18. And that's our final answer, 1/18. Okay, I'm now going to add in some other questions. We're going to ramp up our difficulty. So let's say we've got 2/7 times 3/4. Same rule applies. It's a multiplication, it's fractions. That same rule applies. Top times top, well, that's going to be 6. Bottom times bottom, 7 times 4. Sometimes, if you're not sure, you can use your calculator. 7 times 4, well, that's going to be 28 according to my calculator. 28. And what we can think about here is this fraction is not actually simplified. I can see a factor that we can get rid of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 2, just to try to make our fraction simplify or simple. So 6 divided by 2, well, that's going to be 3. And 28 divided by 2, well, that's going to be 14. Perfect. That looks simple to me. I can't see or think of any other numbers that 3 and 14 have in common. Awesome. Okay. So question 5, we'll do a 6th one as well. So what about 3/12 times 4/10? So we're getting some bigger numbers now. So let's have a look. But the same rule still applies. Top times top, 4 times 3, that's going to get us to 12. Bottom times bottom, well, that's 12 times 10, that's 120. And we need to think, do these numbers have something in common? Well, I think they both got a 12 in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the top by 12, and I'm going to divide the bottom by 12, just to simplify that fraction. And that's going to become 1 divided by 10. And just so you know, I sneakily, to get that 10, I used my calculator before the video started to help me with that one. And then question 6 will make up a big number. So let's do 11 over 15 times 10 over 20. So it even works with big numbers. So top times top, 11 times 10. Just because I'm dealing with big numbers, I am going to write them down. So I'm going to get my calculator to help me step by step. And bottom, 15 times 20. So I'm going to use my calculator. 11 times 10, well, that's 110, okay, 110. And then 15 divided by 15 times 20, well, that's 300. So those are both big numbers. We need to think, is there a common factor? Is there a number we can get rid of? I can see they both got a 10 in common probably. So let's divide both of these by 10s. See if that can help us simplify our fraction. So 110 divided by 10, well, I've been told that's 11. And then we got 300 divided by 10. I've been told that's 30 now. And that looks like a simplified fraction. I can't think of any other numbers that the top and the bottom have in common. So just to recap, we've learned a really important skill about fractions. We've learned how to multiply fractions. It will be the easiest multiplication or the easiest fraction skill that we learn. And we focused on top times top and bottom times bottom. With that, you can answer any multiplication question that you have. All right, let's pause the video. If you need to get some notes or need to get these examples down, please do. Let's stop. Let's get into some questions.